Come inside. Come inside.
The fog hung thick in the parking lot, muffling the distant hum of late-night traffic. I had parked too close to the funeral home's shadowed facade, the building looming like a stone sentinel. The sign above the door flickered, Evergreen Mortuary, its letters wavering in the half-light. A low, almost imperceptible sound came from inside, metal scraping against metal, rhythmic, deliberate. I paused, gripping my keys tighter, telling myself it was the wind. Then came the rattling. From the prep room, a casket trembled violently, though no one else was there. The sound echoed through the halls like a whispered warning. My stomach sank. I pushed the door open, expecting an empty room. Nothing but pale sheets, silver instruments, and the faint odor of embalming fluid. And yet, the casket lid had shifted slightly, a dark handprint pressed against the wood. I froze. A whisper drifted down the hallway. "They don't follow the rules." The voice was neither male nor female, older and hollow, like it had been spoken from behind a grave. I spun, but the corridor was empty, shadows pooling in the corners, stretching unnaturally. My phone vibrated violently in my pocket. An unknown number. I unlocked it. The message read, stark against the black screen, "You're next." I dropped the phone. The sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs, slow, deliberate. I wasn't alone, and the dead. I already knew they were watching. The first night I stepped into Evergreen Mortuary, I thought it would be a routine job. I was wrong. The building was older than the town itself, a squat brick structure with narrow windows that seemed more like slits to spy on the world outside. Inside, the air was thick, cloying with the smell of embalming fluid and something older, something metallic that made the back of my throat tighten. Fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing with the kind of low hum that made you question whether the noise was electrical or alive. Every corridor seemed longer than the last, and shadows pooled in corners as if waiting. I met Mr. Holloway, the mortician, a tall man with a face like carved granite and eyes that never quite met mine. His smile was quick, polite, but there was a twitch at the edge of it, the way his fingers drummed on the countertop as if listening to a rhythm only he could hear. "You'll learn the rules soon enough," he said, his voice soft, careful, like a warning wrapped in courtesy. "Some don't. Follow them." I nodded, unsure whether to laugh or shiver. My first task was simple: organize the prep room, check the instruments, make sure everything was ready for the next day. But the room had a pulse. I could feel it under my skin, like the walls themselves were breathing. A metal tray slid slightly on its own. I swear I saw it twitch as if nudged by an unseen hand. I tried to shake it off. "It's just nerves," I muttered to myself, hearing the echo of my own voice in the empty room. That's when I noticed her. A body, wrapped neatly in white, lay on the gurney. But her eyes, they weren't closed. A faint shimmer glinted from beneath the lids, almost imperceptible, like the remnants of a life she shouldn't have kept. My breath caught. I leaned closer, and a cold draft swept through the room, whispering through the cracks in the walls. A colleague, a woman named Marcy, appeared at the doorway. She didn't knock. She just stood there, her expression tight, almost fearful. "Some of them don't like to wait," she said, voice low. "Some of them leave when they want." I swallowed hard. "Leave?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my hands were trembling. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Some of them aren't bound by the rules. You'll see soon enough." And then she was gone, vanishing into the hallway as silently as she had appeared. I tried to focus on work, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Cabinets creaked as if opened by invisible hands. A clock ticked unevenly, pausing, skipping seconds that made my heart race. Every corner seemed to shift when I glanced away, walls subtly bending, shadows stretching. By midnight, the building had grown cold. The lights flickered once, twice, and then settled into a dim hum. That's when I heard the wet sound, like footsteps across polished linoleum. But the floor was empty. I followed the sound down the long hallways, heart hammering, until I reached the main chapel. The caskets were lined neatly, lid after lid, but something was off. One in particular, a small cedar box, was slightly ajar. I froze, the smell of rot or something older, fouler, rising into my nose. "Who's there?" I called, voice shaking, trying to assert control. Silence answered, then I saw it. A hand, pale, veined, almost translucent, peeked from the gap in the lid. My stomach churned. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if testing the air. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. A whisper floated across the chapel, faint but unmistakable. "You shouldn't be here." I turned sharply, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. No one. The chapel was empty. Just rows of silent witnesses, staring at me with blank, accusatory eyes. I ran. Down the hall, past the prep room, past the locked doors that now seemed to groan in protest. The sound of breathing followed me, wet and ragged, echoing in every corner. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My fingers shook as I opened it. A single message. "You broke the first rule." The lights flickered one last time, then plunged the hallway into darkness. I could hear footsteps again, closer now. I wasn't alone. I knew then, with a chill that gripped my bones, that the rules weren't for them. The dead didn't follow rules, and I had just started working here. This introduction sets the tone. Atmospheric dread, psychological horror, subtle supernatural hints, and sharp, unsettling dialogue while introducing the protagonist and the funeral home's ominous nature. It ends on a suspenseful cliffhanger to lead naturally into the conflict development. The days that followed were worse than the first night. They weren't just unsettling, they were suffocating. Evergreen Mortuary seemed alive, as if the building itself exhaled cold air down the long hallways whenever I passed. I began noticing small things, odd things that couldn't be explained by nerves or exhaustion. A metal tray would be slightly shifted. A pair of scissors would vanish from the prep room, only to appear perched neatly atop a casket hours later. At first I chalked it up to Marcy or someone else moving things, but no one else seemed to work nights as I did. I began hearing voices at odd hours. Whispered fragments, my name, a word I didn't understand, the faintest laugh. Always behind me, always gone when I turned. I tried to record them on my phone, but each time the playback revealed nothing but static. I started keeping a notebook, jotting down every detail, every anomaly. Each entry grew darker, more frantic. One night, while checking the ledger for incoming bodies, I found an old entry from decades ago, a name I didn't recognize, followed by a single word in the remarks column, returned. The word gnawed at me. I asked Mr. Holloway about it. "That's complicated," he said, his voice tight. "Some of them don't stay." I stared at him, expecting clarification. He didn't give it. Just walked away, his coat swishing down the hall like the whisper of wings. The more I stayed, the more the funeral home seemed to warp around me. Hallways stretched longer than they should. Doors that had been locked moments ago were suddenly open. I started seeing figures in mirrors, glimpses of shapes behind me that vanished the moment I turned. One night I heard something scratching at the chapel door. It wasn't a normal sound. Too slow, deliberate, wet and scratching like fingernails against wood. I opened the door, nothing. The room was empty, the caskets undisturbed. But when I returned to the prep room, I found a single coffin lid ajar. Inside was the body of a woman I had embalmed only the night before. But she wasn't dead anymore. Her eyes were open, dull but unblinking, staring straight at me. My mouth went dry. "She's moving?" I whispered to myself. Marcy appeared again, her face pale and tight. "You saw it," she said. "No question, no fear, just a statement. They don't follow the rules. Some of them return." I wanted to leave. I wanted to quit. But something about the funeral home held me. I couldn't explain it. An unseen gravity that anchored me to the halls, to the whispers, to the living corpses that didn't belong in the world. It was Mr. Holloway who finally told me the story, or part of it. One night, after hearing my frantic attempts to rationalize what I'd seen, he leaned against the counter, eyes darkened by candlelight. "This place, it's older than the town remembers," he began. "Evergreen Mortuary wasn't just a funeral home. My predecessors, they made mistakes. Some deals, some experiments. They learned the rules of life and death aren't universal, not for everyone." He told me about a mortician decades ago who had tried to bend death itself, tampering with embalming techniques, creating substances that tethered souls to their corpses. Some bodies refused to stay. They walked, they waited, they watched. Some came back to life, others didn't leave entirely. He paused, staring at the floor. The rules were never meant for them. Only the living, I wanted to scream, to argue, to call someone, anyone, but I already knew he was telling the truth. The signs were everywhere. The moving trays, the whispering voices, the bodies that didn't rest. The hauntings grew more frequent and audacious. Coffins would open on their own, doors would slam when I approached, and sometimes I would hear a wet, dragging sound across the polished floors. Slow, deliberate, patient. One evening, while cataloging bodies in the ledger, I noticed something chilling. Several names were circled, dates marked not by their death, but by their return, and scribbled in the margins, "Do not disturb." "They are not bound," I questioned Marcy. "Bound? By what?" Her eyes were wide, her voice trembling. "By nothing you understand. They aren't human anymore. The dead, they answer to no one. And they're patient." I began having vivid flashbacks, dreams or memories I couldn't tell, which intertwined with reality. I saw the mortician of decades past, performing rituals on tables lined with bodies. I heard voices chanting in the dark, pleading, screaming. I would wake in the prep room drenched in sweat and see the same figures from my dreams standing silently in the shadows, watching. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't leave. My colleagues seemed unwilling to intervene, almost complicit. Every time I tried to call someone outside the mortuary, the line would cut out. My phone battery drained unnaturally fast, sometimes plunging from full to dead in minutes. I began marking the doors with chalk, numbering rooms to track movement. Coffins that had been stationary would shift overnight. The markings were smeared or completely gone. The whispers followed me wherever I went, taunting, testing, beckoning. Once, I heard Marcy whisper my name from the shadows. I ran, corners of the hallway stretching impossibly, the lights flickering. A hand touched my shoulder, but when I spun around, the hallway was empty. I began doubting my sanity. But then I saw it, the ledger again. Names of bodies, times of return, precise details only someone inside the mortuary could know. I wasn't imagining it. The tipping point came when I saw one of the corpses I had prepared rise from its casket and stand silently in the chapel. Its movements were slow, deliberate. Its head turned, and I saw it recognize me. I ran to Mr. Halloway, desperate for answers. "What do I do? How do I stop them?" He didn't answer immediately. He finally said grimly, "Stop. You don't stop them. The rules, they don't apply. Once they notice you, once they remember you, it's only a matter of time. The living follow rules, the dead, they follow no one." I understood then. The funeral home had been a trap disguised as a workplace. The dead weren't just restless. They were cunning, patient, inevitable. Every shadow, every whisper, every subtle movement had been their warning. And now, I was next. The night had fallen like a suffocating shroud over Evergreen Mortuary, thick fog curling through the windows and seeping under doors. I was alone, or at least I told myself I was. Every sound screamed otherwise. The metallic scrape of a tray, the soft thump of a coffin lid, and the faintest whispers curling through the halls, calling my name in tones too human and yet too wrong. I ran down the main corridor, heart hammering, breath ragged. The lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that stretched and warped into impossible shapes. A door slammed somewhere behind me. My footsteps echoed, but were soon joined by another rhythm, slower, deliberate. Something following, waiting. I reached the chapel and stopped dead. The rows of caskets were no longer stationary. One by one, the lids had shifted, some fully open, revealing faces pale and unreadable. A figure emerged from one of the coffins, slow and deliberate. Its eyes fixed on me. It recognized me. My stomach churned. "Who? What are you?" I whispered, voice shaking, barely audible. A low, wet whisper answered, "We are the rules." "You broke them." The funeral home seemed to shift around me. The walls elongated, bending impossibly. The hallway I had just run down now looped back upon itself, doors opening to rooms I had never seen, though the architecture was familiar. I was trapped in a nightmare built of bricks, mortar, and something older, something conscious. I tried to flee, but the dead were patient. Their movements were deliberate. From the prep room, a coffin slid across the floor without a sound. From another corner, a hand reached from a casket lid and beckoned me forward, pale and veined. I stumbled, knocking over a metal tray. The clatter echoed like a gunshot. The bodies turned one by one toward me, not with anger but expectation. They had been waiting for someone to break the rules, someone to notice, someone to follow the pattern they understood, and I did not. I heard Mr. Halloway's voice in the darkness, though he was nowhere in sight. You can't stop them. The rules aren't for the living. Never have been. I fled toward the prep room, hoping to find some instrument, some tool to defend myself, but it was useless. The caskets multiplied, filling every doorway. Coffin lids slammed open, shadows stretching across the walls. Whispers crescendoed into voices, accusations, demands, warnings. You shouldn't have come. You are next. We remember you. I backed into the corner, breath shallow. My mind raced, trying to rationalize the impossible, trying to tell myself it was a trick of light, fatigue, or stress. But the ledger on the table told the truth. Names marked, times noted, the exact moment they returned. They were not human anymore, not by my understanding. They were patient. And they were inevitable, I screamed. The sound was swallowed by the walls. A figure rose from the largest casket, the mortician from decades past, impossibly tall, cloaked in shadows. His face was carved with a permanent, jagged grin. We've been waiting for you, he said, voice dripping contemptuous amusement. The room spun. Time warped. The walls pulsated. I saw glimpses of other funerals, decades of broken rules, of corpses rising and walking, of frightened employees swallowed by the night. The building was not a building. It was a trap, a funnel for the inevitable, for the dead who answered to no one. The figures pressed closer, silent until they whispered together in one voice. You see now. You are bound by rules we never follow. I stumbled backward, trying doors, windows, anywhere to escape. Each door I opened led to another chapel, another row of caskets, always facing me, waiting. I reached the prep room again, where the tables were lined with instruments. But as I moved to grab anything, the tools rose into the air, spinning slowly, levitating as if pulled by unseen hands. I was surrounded. Coffin lids slammed open around me. The pale figures stepped forward unhurried, patient. One leaned down, so close I could see the network of veins beneath its skin. Its lips parted. The rules were never for you. I realized then that my panic, my attempts to flee, were anticipated. They were not chasing me. They were waiting for me to notice, to understand, to succumb. My mind felt as if it were unspooling, unraveling thread by thread. The walls of reality collapsing. I sank to the floor, hyperventilating, trying to cover my ears against the whispers that seemed to emanate from every wall, every shadow. Stop, please! I didn't know. I shouted. A hand touched my shoulder. Cold, impossibly cold. I turned to see Mr. Halloway, or the version of him twisted in shadow, grinning. You've been waiting for this moment your whole life, he said. We remember every one of you, every rule broken, every whisper ignored. The caskets shifted again, doors opening and closing in an impossible rhythm, and the figures began to advance. My vision blurred, the room stretching infinitely, and I could hear my own heartbeat as a loud, drumming echo in the void. Then, silence. A single pause. I looked up and every face in the room was fixed on me, waiting. My knees gave way. There was no escape, no logic, no world outside. I understood with a cold certainty that the funeral home was a trap and I was caught. The dead were inevitable. They had waited centuries, and I had broken the first rule. I had noticed them. Climax, Part 6, Collapse. I screamed once more, a sound swallowed by the walls, by the shadows, by the waiting. And then I felt it, the hands pale and patient pulling me up into the rows of caskets. Time fractured. The hallway behind me stretched into darkness. My body moved without my control, guided by forces I could not resist. The rules aren't for us. Never were. The whisper came from everywhere at once. The room dissolved. I was nothing but fear and awareness, consciousness dragged across the impossible halls, surrounded by figures who had once been human, now patient and eternal. And then the final realization. It was over. No one would hear my screams. No one would find me. I had crossed into a realm where the dead had always been the arbiters, and the living were the trespassers. The mortuary waited, patient, endless. When the authorities arrived the next morning, Evergreen Mortuary was silent. Too silent. The fog clung stubbornly to the building's brick walls, curling into the gaps between the gravestones outside. No sounds of life emerged, no voices, no alarms, nothing. It was as if the world itself hesitated to witness what had transpired within. The doors were locked from the inside. No one had been seen leaving. My colleagues, if they had existed at all, were gone. Marcy's desk was empty, and the ledger I had pored over for answers was nowhere to be found. Only the faint traces of embalming fluid lingered in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of something older, darker. Detectives walked cautiously through the narrow hallways. Their steps echoed, loud and alien, as if they had entered a place built for another world. They took photographs, notes, careful not to disturb anything. Yet the sense of being watched clung to every corner of the building. The caskets, neatly aligned as always, were undisturbed, or so it seemed. Some lids were slightly ajar, just enough to catch a glint of pale skin, a reminder that the occupants might not be entirely gone. A single wet footprint appeared on the polished floor, leading nowhere. No one could explain it. Reports from the neighbors were vague, mostly of fog, strange lights, and an unsettling quiet that descended over the property at night. Nothing concrete, nothing that could be recorded in the world of the living. Weeks passed. The mortuary remained closed, abandoned, yet it was never empty. Those who dared to peer through its windows swore they could see movement, shadows stretching in impossible ways, fleeting glimpses of figures standing just beyond the glass. Some claimed to hear whispers in the wind, fragments of words, rules. Broken. Next. I didn't survive in any way that mattered, not entirely. Somewhere between reality and the corridors of that building I had become unmoored. Time had stretched and collapsed around me. My own reflection haunted me in mirrors, distorted and pale, eyes too wide, too aware. I knew now that noticing them, the dead, was the first step to being claimed. Memories of the funeral home returned in fragments. The first casket lid I saw move. Marcy's pale face, Mr. Holloway's grin as he whispered that the rules didn't apply. Every detail was a thread connecting me to a fate I could never escape. Evergreen Mortuary still waits. For employees, for witnesses, for those foolish enough to believe rules govern life and death. The building is patient, silent, endless. Caskets line the halls, some open, some closed, all watching. The dead remember, they always do. They are patient. They are inevitable. I am there too, in some sense. Not fully, not as I was, watching, waiting, understanding. The rules never applied to the dead. They never will. And the living, those who enter, will learn the truth, slowly, painfully, until it is too late. Sometimes I hear the faintest whisper of my own name, carried on the wind or through the cracks in the floorboards. It is a warning to the next fool. You are next. The town has forgotten, or perhaps it has chosen to. Evergreen Mortuary remains on the outskirts, a fixture of fog and rumor. Children dare each other to walk near the iron gate at night. Old residents speak in hushed tones about lights flickering in empty windows. No one enters, no one stays, and yet it is impossible to leave the building entirely unclaimed. Every employee who steps inside becomes a thread in the tapestry of inevitability. Each whisper, each moving casket, each shadow is a reminder. The rules were never for them. I linger in the corners of mirrors, in the flicker of fluorescent bulbs, in the soft, wet sound of footsteps that no one else can hear. I have become part of the patient inevitability, watching new employees wander the hallways, listening to their shallow breaths, counting the seconds until they realize the truth. The dead answer to no one. The final, quiet realization spreads slowly, like cold water through the veins. Life and death are not equal here. The dead are patient. The dead are aware. And the living are the trespassers. Even now, somewhere deep in the fogged halls of Evergreen Mortuary, I hear my name whispered again. It is not a warning this time. It is an invitation, a promise, a truth. The rules aren't for the dead, and you are next. The building waits, patiently, eternally.